Welcome to Grounds for Conversations. I'm Amber Noble. It's difficult to find common ground when we focus on things we disagree about. But if we take a step back, we realize that we all have things to learn. Grounds for Conversations is a podcast where we dive into a conversation about Scripture, looking at the story in its entirety. This is for the believer, the questioner, the invested, and the searching. I invite you to join the conversation. Also, at the end of this podcast, stick around for an extra shot, a conversation where we discuss everything about nothing. Welcome back to another episode of Grounds for Conversation. My name is Amber Noble, and again, I have my good friend and co-host today, Aimee Raggio. Aimee, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited about today. Actually, this topic, when we started talking about misunderstood women in the Bible, we started in our conversation with each other about this, and then we went backwards, kind of, if you think back to that. So what we're talking about today really is the women in Jesus's life, and all the way from the beginning to the cross, to the resurrection, and just where they fell into his ministry, what that looked like, what we thought that looked like growing up versus what we see here now. Is that a good way to put it?
Absolutely. And this is really exciting. This is a very exciting topic.
You can't see her, but she's jumping up and down right now.
Not really high.
Just a little bit of jump. Just a little bit of jump. Okay. So Aimee, I'm going to start with you. Like when you think back to these women in Jesus's life, like what was your perception growing up of Mary Magdalene, Mary, the mother of Jesus, the other women that you might have heard about but was dismissed? Like what was your take?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm going to have to admit that I didn't hear a lot about these women growing up.
Okay.
We all knew about Mary. She was the mother of Jesus. But really, in my world, her story kind of stopped with the nativity. Mm-hmm. And I don't remember hearing a lot about her beyond, the wedding at Cana.
Right. Now, I will tell you when I was a young mom, and the only thing that gave me peace, because I was so terrified that I was going to lose my children, misplace them somewhere. I'm like, well, Mary lost Jesus, and they were gone for a couple days before they realized he wasn't with them. So if the mother of God can misplace the child and get away with it, I think I'm going to be okay.
Hey, do you think she ever looked at the crowd that they were traveling with and said, "Hey guys, it takes a village"?
Oh, he's going to die for you one day, so y'all just get it together. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's start a little bit with Mary. Okay. We know that, she was young, 13, 14, and the angel appears to her and says, "Hey, you're going to have the Son of God. You're going to be pregnant with the Messiah." And she's like, "How does that work?" And obviously it all went down, and she didn't. The first thing she said was yes, right? She said, "Yes, be it unto you according to your word." But then it went on to say that Mary pondered these things in her heart. And I thought about that over the course of the last little bit of us getting ready for this particular podcast. And I love the fact that Mary's story started with a yes, but knowing that what was to come was not going to be easily accepted or embraced by her culture, by the world, that she stopped and she gave herself the ability to ponder, to think, to process.
Right.
And obviously the Holy Spirit confirming, reaffirming, comforting, whatever that looked like. She didn't run off and tell everybody until she met up with Elizabeth, who was her cousin, and Elizabeth knew immediately because little John leapt within her, right? But throughout the Gospels, you see Mary, among other women, threaded. When you really start studying it out, you see Mary threaded through. So why don't you share a little bit about what you've seen, what you've been studying, what you're thinking, and your thought process here
on Mary?
Well, on any of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think just listening to you give a little bit of Mary's backstory and her receiving this commission, if you will, from God to to carry the Messiah. And I can't help but think of like Daniel and these Hebrew boys that went into the furnace, and we're told in their story that they came prepared with their answer. Not that Mary ever fathomed that she would carry the Messiah, but that Mary would have grown in a family and in a community where she felt prepared to give an answer when it came.
Do you know why?
I don't know why.
Well, my opinion, and it's not like I know, but my opinion is that everything that had been told up to this, everything that had been understood up to this point had been told in stories. They would, if you look back in Old Testament, the stories of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob had been recited over and over and over to the Jewish people, to the Hebrew children. So Mary, undoubtedly, as a Hebrew child, as a little Jewish girl, understood that when God spoke, your answer was yes. When God called. So there had been stories. Tradition was not like they had, bookshelves, a library full of books. Much of what they understood was ingrained in them education. Obviously, she was a girl, so there wasn't that education. But the stories were told over and over, not just a, hey, remember that one time kind of story, but it was recited to them all day long as they worked with their parents in the field, as they worked in the shop, as they cleaned the house, whatever. Those stories were recited. So there was an understanding, I believe, through stories, through parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, family members, because those stories had been recited so much. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Mary and spoke that, thus saith the Lord, it was ingrained in her. Right. When God speaks, when God asks, when God moves, I position myself to say yes and follow.
Right. And I think that's beautiful that she grew up with that.
With the stories.
It's not normal to receive a visit from an angel that tells you you're going to bear the Messiah.
Now, from my understanding, it's only going to ever have happened one time. It's not going to happen again.
It was the norm in her culture to hear from God. And I think that's beautiful. The Bible doesn't tell us what Mary's parents thought.
No. There had to have been a little bit, I don't care who you are, there had to have been a little bit of embarrassment. Like, what in the world? Because, these people, they did not have social media. They did not have internet. They did not have television. They didn't have the movies. What they had was their nights around the fire talking about God. Now, God went silent, but yet he remained with voice because of the stories, right? They understood this is who God is, and he's going to send a Messiah, and he is going to do this, and these are the things that are going to happen. And so they were positioned in preparation. They were ready. Right. And I think that there's something to be said about the value of they had no distraction.
They had no distraction. But let's be honest here. In the society of that day, a young girl's value would have lied in her marriageability.
Well, and she was already betrothed to Joseph.
Right. But God saw something more.
Right.
And he said,
right,
I'm inviting you into my story.
Right. Absolutely.
In a big way.
Right.
And we're going to see this thread of Mary's story go right on through
to you and I.
To us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Through the death, the burial, the resurrection, and the foundation of the church.
Right.
Beyond. She was a pillar. She was a rebar in the foundation of the church, if you will. And this story is going to unfold in an amazing way. We're going to see some other women come alongside her, and it's so exciting.
I agree.
We're not that far removed from these women.
We're not, but yet we've allowed ourselves to think we are.
We think we are.
Yes.
But we're not.
I think that I want to say this again. I've said this on because we're talking about misunderstood women of the Bible. This is not about anti-men.
Absolutely
This is not making women equal to men. This isn't about fighting for a place. This is about recognizing who God says these women are. recognizing who God says we as women are and what that looks like at the table of life. Before we go into more about some of these women, I do want to paint that picture. I believe, and we've talked about this a little bit, that we have this idea in our society. You have super anti-men feminists, then you have just your feminists, then you have your women who believe that it's wrong to have an opinion. And somewhere in there lies us.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the opinion that we are in the process of forming has come from a lot of study of scripture, a lot of support from our husbands, and a lot of wisdom from our pastors, honestly.
Right.
I believe, like for me, I've always had strong men in my life that were married to strong women. And there was an understanding that both had value.
Right.
Both very different, both had value. But I think about when it comes to the things of God and our life that was ordained and designed by God, that we view the table of God like the table at a food court in the mall. We're at the food court in the mall. You're looking for an open chair. And if you go get that chair and you need ketchup, you need a refill on your drink, there needs to be somebody else at the table or you're going to lose it. If you get up and move, your spot's gone. Right? But we oftentimes look at when we finally we fight for this place at a table that really we're never meant to fight for. We fight to prove I have something to offer. I'm bringing something to the table. We are so afraid to grow and move in that because what if somebody takes our seat? And I know that sounds like I'm putting that on everybody, but I think if we can really evaluate why we respond the way we do to things, why we look at life the way we do, why we are very critical of other ministries or people who think differently than we do. Like we think, well, it's this way or no other way. And we're not open to the fact that heaven is going to be full of a lot of things that we are not expecting. And that God in his sovereignty, but in his magnitude is a lot bigger than anything we can wrap our mind around. Right. There's a good chance we don't know squat.
Oh, absolutely.
Do you know what I'm saying? So why is it that when God said, no, I prepared, what does he say in Psalms? I prepared a table for you in the presence of your enemies. So there's something beautiful about that phrase, but it's not just in the presence of enemies. It's recognizing that he prepared a spot for us at his table. In front of the enemies with other believers, like you do not have to fight for your place in the kingdom of God. Right. That place has been prepared.
Well, and I think when we're all walking in the path that God has laid out for us, men or women, there's no need for a non-compete clause because
absolutely
there's no competition there. And I think as this unfolds, when we talk more about Mary and some of these other women who came alongside her, I think we're going to see that this was not the sitcom table of the Last Supper painting, where everybody's on one side of the table.
Right.
And, I'm here and I know you're here because we understand our role as a counterbalance here.
Right.
I'm not here to do what a man can do, and I'm not here to say what a man can say.
Okay, but I'm not here to do what you do.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
I think it's not just about, let's take it a step further. Let's not make this men versus women. How about we stop competing with anybody? How about we just start being who God's called us to be?
Right.
There's something valuable about me not comparing myself to my husband and his gifts and his skills, but also me not comparing myself to you.
Right.
Like I can get super intimidated by your gifting and your skills, but how about I just go, wait a minute, let me lean into who I'm supposed to be and develop and grow there.
Can you imagine if Elizabeth had felt that her
baby was not as significant?
Right, or that her carrying John was not as good as Mary carrying the Christ?
I've never thought about that. Like you had an opportunity right there for there to be major jealousy, major comparison.
Absolutely.
But yet when you understand, even if you don't fully understand, but when you understand that you have a purpose, you can celebrate other people in their victories without feeling like that means you lost.
Right.
It's powerful.
Let's get into it.
Let's do it. Okay.
Because it's here.
It is. Let's do it. Why don't you go ahead and share kind of some of the things that you found, because I know you've got a lot and I'm excited about it.
So I'm going to jump right in Luke chapter 8. And if you don't mind, I'll just read this. And I'm reading from, I think this is an NLT.
Okay.
I pulled out an old Bible because I just, I'm studying from the electronic Bible a lot. And I just really felt like, no, you know what? I want to see the words on the paper.
Right.
So Luke chapter 8. Soon after Jesus began a tour of the nearby towns and villages, preaching and announcing the good news about the kingdom of God, he took his 12 disciples with him, along with some women who had been cured of evil spirits and diseases. Among them were Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out 7 demons, Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's business manager, Susanna, and many others who were contributing from their own resources to support Jesus and his disciples.
I love it. I love it that you're reading it in Luke, and we talked about this earlier because in the beginning of Luke, and this is super significant, if you're new to the faith, if you're exploring what does this look like, I don't even know if I believe in God, whatever, and the whole concept of the Bible is brand new to you, the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are 4 accounts of the history of the life of Christ from 4 different perspectives.
They're concurrent. They
Absolutely.
run together. Right.
Luke was a doctor. He's very thorough, very detailed.
A little OCD.
Absolutely. And you brought this up, and I looked the verse up. It says in Luke chapter 1, verse 3, it seemed fitting for me, this is Luke writing, it seemed fitting for me as well, having investigated everything carefully from the beginning, to write it all out for you in consecutive order, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the exact truth about the things you have been taught. Why is that important? Because he said, look, I'm not leaving out any details.
Right.
I'm not saying there was some people. There were.
Right.
There were a lot of people. And obviously, we understand that the Bible gives us an overview of a lot of things that we don't see.
Right.
But he went specific enough to say there were a lot of people. There were these women. There were some other women too. Why was it important for Luke to name those women? Why was it important for Luke to verify that there were women present? Maybe because there was something that the Lord knew we were going to need in 2022, 2023, and on, that women were present in Jesus's ministry.
So why did he choose these 3 to call out by name when he clearly states there was a multitude, if you will, of women, whether there were 10 women or whether there were 500 women or whatever the amount.
Girl, I grew up believing there were no women.
Right.
And so I was just, the first time I saw any of that, I was stoked to see that there was somebody else there besides just the men. Not that there's anything wrong with the men being there, but obviously there was a purpose for them and a purpose for them to be named. Right. So talk about that.
But let's look at these 3 women he calls out in this scripture. He talks about Mary Magdalene, whom he had cast out 7 demons. We understand that biblically, when you use the number 7, it refers to completeness. So here is a woman, Mary Magdalene, who was completely possessed of the devil. Right. And he completely
set her free.
Now, some believers believe that Mary Magdalene was a prostitute, but the Bible never says that. We do know that Magdalene, being from the region of Magdala, was known to be an area of prostitution. We might assume that she was a prostitute, but the Bible doesn't say that.
Right.
But the bottom line is, here's a woman who was completely possessed of the devil and delivered by God. And then we go down and he mentions Joanna, the wife of Chuza or Shuza. I'm not sure how you pronounce that name. Her husband was a business manager for Herod, for the king. In those days, a man would have married a woman of like status.
Right.
So we're talking about
a woman of power.
A Real Housewives of Israel sort of thing.
Well, but hold on. But Herod, the business manager of Herod, this is a woman that is not going to be somebody that's hanging out in Jewish culture.
No. She likely would not have been hanging around with Mary Magdalene.
Right.
So we kind of had a woman with nothing to lose, and now we have a woman with everything to lose.
Right. And in the midst, also the mother of Jesus.
Right.
She's
Mary,
with
the mother of Jesus, is there. Susanna is there. We don't know a lot about Susanna. We don't get a lot of detail about her. And then later on in scriptures, we'll see a couple of other women mentioned. There's Mary, the mother of James. And then there's Salome. This is not a charcuterie board. But no, there are some women named who come from very diverse backgrounds and are representative of the women who have come out and who are
right
disciples of Jesus.
Right.
Now, we're not talking about fangirls.
No.
They weren't waiting out, at backstage door for Jesus to come off the mountain after giving the Beatitudes so that they can get an autograph,
Right. And they also weren't just the ones making dinner, even though they probably did.
They probably were making dinner.
But that's what I want to talk about today, because I believe that there is a lot of belief from people that they were there to take care of the men. Okay?
They were there to minister to Jesus and the disciples, but, and this is an important distinction, they were there to minister alongside Jesus and the disciples.
Absolutely.
And before you say, that's not scriptural, let's just go
I'm not
here.
going to say that, but
no,
go ahead.
I know you're not going to say that. But in the book of Acts, chapter 1, right up front, we see in verse 12 that the apostles have returned to Jerusalem from the Mount of Olives, a distance of half a mile. When they arrived, they went into the upstairs room of the house where they were staying. Here are the names of those who were present: Peter, John, James, Andrew, Philip, Thomas, Bartholomew, Matthew, James the son of Alphaeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas the son of James. They all met together and were constantly united in prayer, along with Mary, the mother of Jesus, several other women, and the brothers of Jesus. These women had an active role
in ministry.
Right. And again, I'm reading from the New Living Translation, but we know from other translations that the word that was used to describe what these women were doing is the word that we translate into English as deacons.
Mm-hmm.
So they were ministering to the poor.
Because obviously during that day and time, it was not appropriate for women to be hanging out with men. Jesus was a rabbi. And so women did not get to learn.
Mm-hmm.
For these men to be traveling with Jesus, studying and learning at his feet, for women to be present, they really put themselves on the line.
Right.
And so Jesus is not going to do anything that cause that to be questioned. So as you think about this, there's thousands and thousands of people that come to be healed, to be fed.
Right.
There were probably times that women needed specific ministry.
Absolutely.
That I'm sure these women stepped into that role, not just to protect the women they were ministering, but to protect reputation, whether it be of Jesus or the other disciples.
And we see this modeled in ministry even today.
Absolutely.
I mean, in ministry, I can't tell you how many times I've been invited into a counseling session because there was a woman who was vulnerable and she was going to be counseled by a male pastor or a male minister. And just as an accountability partner, I would be invited into these meetings, and vice versa. We call that accountability. We call that transparency, and we see it modeled in this foundational church.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's back up a little bit, because like you said, there's people that are going to think, well, they're there to make the meals or to take care of whatever. But you said the word deacon, and that's going to hit some chords with people because they have an idea, the deacons of the church. Well, let's think outside the four walls, because none of these people were inside four walls.
No. And to be honest with you, I don't believe the word church was even being tossed around right now.
No. I agree with you there. But the reality is this: them making meals, was that ministry? Absolutely. Them taking care of Jesus and the disciples, was that ministry? Yes. Were they limited to that? No.
No, absolutely not.
The more you study the life of Christ, the more you see women were the very beginning and the very end. How do we know? I'm gonna throw this out there. I know your answer, but I'm gonna throw it at you anyway. How do we know about all the accounts that happen from the conception of Christ,
right,
to the death of Christ, to the resurrection? How do we know those things?
Because they were testified about and they were witnessed of, and this witness shared by women.
By women. Does that mean that men didn't have a place? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Of course they did. But what we know about, let's go to the flogging and the crucifixion and death of Christ. We know that many of the disciples ran. They were terrified. And can we just be honest? Let's not make them out to be weak men. I don't know anybody that in their mind were like, I'm following this guy. We know he's the Son of God. We've got this figured out, but he's here to establish his kingdom.
Right.
So in their mind, that death was not a factor, even though Jesus implied that, even though Jesus was like, this is my body, this is my blood. And they're like, okay, well, that's weird. But they did what was about to take place. They had a picture in their mind that was very different than what happened. And I think that it's really easy for us to sit in the comfort of our home, in the comfort of our lives and go, well, those disciples turned their back on Jesus. Really? Mm-hmm. They had a picture that didn't get played out and they were terrified. And I think any of us could, if we're honest, could say, I get it.
Well, I'm going to be really honest with you right here and tell you that I can't watch The Passion of the Christ. And I know how it ends.
Yeah.
I'm not faulting anybody
for running
away.
Because of like, this doesn't make sense. I don't know what's happening.
Right.
Nothing. And feeling guilty of, should we have protected him more? Are we angry at Judas? Like there's a lot of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
But we know that based off scripture, not Aimee and Amber think, but based off scripture, we know that at the cross, at the beating, in those moments, mm-hmm. were those women. They were there. And also, apparently, John was there too. Was he there the whole time? We don't know.
We don't know that.
John was there, but those women were present up until the very end. So you think about this. How do we know about the crown of thorns? The stories that were told. Right. How do we know about the nails? The stories that were told. How do we know about the spear in his side? The stories that were told. How do we know about the thief on the cross that turned and said, remember me? Mm-hmm. Because there were women present that kept their eyes on Jesus and took into account everything that was said.
And Amber, they were close in. And we know this because Jesus addresses them on the cross.
Yes, and addresses John. So John is present in that moment. He addresses them, and they not only took his words, mm-hmm. they recorded it. They kept it recorded. They continued to tell it. And we have it recorded in scripture here. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
And listen, they didn't back down.
No.
Now, some of that may be some mama bear coming from Mary, the mother of Jesus. I'm going to tell you right now,
for sure. For sure.
But
you know what? Also, let's be honest. Mary Magdalene, whether she was a prostitute, we know she wasn't a good person. You know, right. We know that. I believe I've grown up believing that she was a prostitute. We know that she was demon possessed, but no matter what, if you're fully possessed by the enemy, that full freedom, that is that there's going to be a commitment and a lifelong, like, I am fully devoted to you. Mm-hmm. You set me free. I'm fully devoted to you. There wasn't a person on this earth that was going to stop her from following the very one that set her free.
Absolutely. And I think you and I feel that way today.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, thank God I've never been possessed by 7 demons. I've never been a prostitute. But, oh my.
If you were, it's okay. You could tell us.
That's okay. I haven't been. Don't we have sin in our hearts?
Absolutely. Isn't there stuff that we have to continue to, we have to every day, what does Paul say? Daily die. Like, I'm not going to go back to that life. I'm moving forward.
So these are women who are like the woman at the well are saying, come and see.
Yeah.
Come and see.
I love it. I love it.
Well,
we didn't even talk about her. She's another one in the story of Jesus. The very first evangelist was a woman. Right. So they took into account everything, and mm-hmm. Jesus dies. Everyone, including those women, were distraught, were confused. Mm-hmm. Why did this happen? They buried Jesus in a borrowed tomb. And 3 days later, who shows up on the scene to take care of his body?
Those women.
Those same women. Mm-hmm. And what do they find?
They find an empty tomb.
And what do they do with that information?
They tell their story, Amber.
There's something so powerful about not, hey, the men weren't present, the women were. That's not what we're saying. We're not saying men weren't present.
No.
We're saying that women were present, and because they told their story, you and I are sitting here talking mm-hmm. about it today.
Well, so a couple of disciples had been to the tomb. He wasn't there, and they left. They're like, let's go find out what happened. But it was the women who came to prepare the body who met face to face with Jesus. and he spoke to them. And they bore witness of the resurrected Savior with their eyes, with their hearts, with their lives.
Okay, so I want to talk about that little piece for a minute. When you look at the story, Jesus met the disciples on the road to Bethesda, right? Mm-hmm. And they did not know it was him. They were so distraught and so downcast. Do you think, and I'm not trying to make up scripture or make up a narrative, I'm just asking a question. Do you think the reason it was so easy for the women to recognize it was him because they didn't run when it was easy to run? Because they watched the process, it was easier to accept that it was him versus what are they doing? I can't handle this. And they ran away. Are you understanding what I'm asking?
Right.
Like, I wonder, this is the way my brain works. I wonder if it was so easy for them to look and say, we stood there at the foot of that cross. We stood there as he had this encounter with a thief on the cross. We stood there as this Roman soldier out of his own mouth said, surely this is the Son of God. We watched heaven split open. We watched all this happen. It is not surprising to us, even though it's so outside of anything we've ever experienced. It's easier for us to accept that he is risen today because we were present in the story of what got us to this moment.
I think that's exactly what's happening. Women are much more in tune with their emotions. We have this thing they call women's intuition. And what that is.
Do I have that? I don't know if I do.
Yes, you do. You know.
Well, God's created men to be people who, that's not a bad thing. It's amazing.
No.
They are finishers. They're fixers. My goodness. In our home, I have started 9 million projects that feel that I have not finished it. I've never finished one home project. I'm inspired by these people on HGTV, these women that start, but I'm like, but you got men helping you make this happen.
Right.
Because we've got 50 irons in the fire.
Right.
My husband can come in, he can start and finish something. Boom, boom, boom. He is going to fix a problem. If I say, I'm feeling like this, I have to clarify. I don't need you to fix this. I need you just to hear my feelings, right? God has designed them to be that provider, that fixer, that establisher, that builder. That is not a bad thing. And not that men don't have feelings. I'm thankful my husband does have feelings. You know, I know a lot of men who have feelings. I know a lot of men who have a lot of feelings, but.
Right. But I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Okay, do it.
And say these women at the tomb had some intuition at play.
Do you think the Holy Spirit was prompting them?
Oh, certainly I think the Holy Spirit was prompting them. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of times as women, we tend to see with our heart a little and not so much with our eyes.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Well, they say there's not a better investigator than a mama.
Okay, this is a really bad analogy, but I'm going to go there.
I'm here for a bad analogy.
Have you seen that movie Hook where Peter Pan's all grown up and he goes back?
I know exactly what you're going to say. Yeah. I love this analogy.
And the little boy just looks at him and touches his face.
He squishes on his face. He moves
says,
all.
There you are, Peter.
Yes.
He was able to look beyond the physical.
Right.
And saw with his heart and saw with his spirit and saw with his soul. And I think
I'm following you.
It's like when you have a baby. Okay, little story time.
Okay, story time with Aimee. I'm here for it.
When my third child was born, Cole, you know, I'm an old pro at this. I had a C-section and I send Brian home because we have 2 young children at home, 2 daughters.
They're not alone though. Somebody's with them.
No. You know, grandparents and things. But I said, Brian, you go home, sleep at home so the girls can sleep in their own bed and everybody gets a good night's sleep. I'm an old pro at this and I've got nurses here. Everything's going to be okay.
Right.
So in the middle of the night, they come in to check on the baby as they do in the hospital and the baby's in the room with me. And he was a fat little thing. And fat babies sometimes have a little hard time regulating their breathing situation when they're first born. So they say, oh, we need to take him into the nursery just to keep an eye on him. And the next thing I know, they're like, we're moving him to the NICU. And I don't see my baby now for like a full day. And when Brian makes it back up to the hospital and wheels me into that NICU, I knew my baby.
Right.
They did not have to point him out to me.
Right.
Women
in a room full of babies, you knew which one was yours.
You just know.
Yeah.
And I think these women had this experience with Jesus and they just knew.
Yeah.
They just knew.
Okay. So maybe I'm grasping at straws, but during that time, women were not educated. They did not know how to read. Everyone that Jesus taught, they were educated.
Right.
In some form. Now, I know that they were fishermen and stuff, but there was a start in their life as Jewish children that they studied the Torah. They all did that. There was an understanding. Have you ever heard that phrase, you're too smart for your own good?
Right.
Maybe the beauty of their lack of education forced them to completely rely not on their own understanding, but on what they were experiencing in the moment. I saw this picture not long ago that there was something happening where there was, I don't know if it was like the Queen was passing or whatever, and all these people had, I believe it was the Queen of England, and all these people had cameras out and they were taking a picture, and there was a little lady standing there. She did not have her phone out. She did not have a camera. She was present in the moment.
Absolutely.
And she missed nothing of it. She didn't have to go back and look at the pictures and go, oh, yeah. She just was like, I'm here for it. I'm here in this moment. And there's something there. Please do not misunderstand me. There's value in education.
Absolutely.
There's value in understanding. But there's also value in the innocence of, I just have to believe.
Well, let's just say they weren't formally educated, but I promise you they were taught things, Oh,
absolutely. And they had to have had a little bit of gumption because they were doing things that was not normal. They were traveling with men and with a teacher that is not something you did during that day and time. It was so not normal. Right?
Right.
That being said, we look at this and you have these women who are telling stories. How does that apply to you? How does that apply to me? How does that apply to us? How does that apply to every female listener, every male listener? How does that apply? This is a story. It's history. Okay, great. Now what does that have to do with me?
Right now in society, a big thing for people is your truth.
Right.
Like, share your truth, or this is my truth. I think you have a truth and I have a truth and everybody has a truth, and none of them trump the truth.
Right.
But the only way we get to this, I mean, it's this grand tapestry, is we all weave our truths together on a foundational garment of the truth.
That's the Gospels. You had multiple different accounts of the same story, different angles, different colors. Yes, absolutely. So I think the problem, and I may be going way too far out in the middle of nowhere, the problem I think we face now today, I'm sure you've heard it. I've heard it a million times. Women who say, I just don't get along with other women. And I think that is such a dangerous place to be. I think it's dangerous for women to believe that God doesn't have a purpose for them. And I think it's equally as dangerous for women to believe that other women aren't part of that purpose.
Right. It is a very dangerous thing. And look, it has taken, I'm getting close to 50 years old.
50.
Anyway, it's taken a lot of years for me to trust other women. Why is that? I don't know. I can look back and say that there were some key roles in my life filled by women where hindsight says they weren't helping me so much as they were hindering me.
Right.
And I ask, why is that? And the bottom line is they had fallen victim to the same treatment or the same belief that they had to claw their way to the top.
Right.
And you and I were talking about this earlier, and I hope I can articulate this again the way that it was fresh on my mind, is that women always feel like they have to blaze their own trail.
Right. Why?
Because no one marked the trail that's already there. And we read these stories of these women and we go, oh, hold up. There was a place at the table. There was a place at Jesus' table. There was a seed in ministry.
Right.
There was a way to know
I
God.
I don't have to reinvent the wheel.
I do not have to reinvent the wheel here. Our understanding of scriptures, ever evolving, yes, it always is. This is a real and living document.
Right.
This is a real and living word. And it doesn't change, but
our understanding does.
Change.
Right.
We morph around it and we morph through it. And we constantly filter and refilter ourselves. My grandpa, when I was a little girl, would brew coffee and the water would filter through the grounds and coffee would come out into the pot. And he would pour it back through. He would take the brewed coffee and pour it back into the reservoir and brew another pot of coffee using coffee instead of water. And so you get this double strong coffee. And that's what we're doing with our lives. Well, I don't know. I was, 4.
Why do I, when we're done with this podcast, want to try that?
But, then you're going to have to clean your coffee maker. But that's what we're doing with our lives. We're pouring ourselves over the gospel. And then we're taking that product and
allowing
it
to continue to filter through.
And we're filtering it again and again and again. And we're filtering out our flesh, but we are fortifying ourselves with spirit. We have always heard a male interpretation of scripture. Mm-hmm. And so what I'm saying is those markers, those trailheads that were blazed by women before us have been lost in the weeds.
Yeah. Well, is it also fair to say that some women who have forged a trail were not intentional about making sure that their people could follow them?
Right.
Because scripture is very clear that older women should speak into younger women. And I think that that's a lost thing. And I think part of that is younger women are like, I don't need what you got, sister. I've got it figured out. I've got the internet. I can do my own thing. I don't need to understand where you're coming from because I'm going somewhere different. And that's such a dangerous place.
Well, I think for me personally, it's because for so long, what we heard from other women was a female interpretation of a male interpretation.
Or just be quiet, sweetie.
Right,
just be quiet. Right. Hush now, hush.
I'll tell this story of kind of what spurred me on this journey. I was a young woman, 20 years old, in kind of a fundamentalist type environment of church. And the pastor had announced that it's going to be a Q&A night. And he was saying, ask me anything. Come with your questions, ask me anything, and I'm going to give you answers in front of the whole congregation.
Yeah. And knowing you, I bet you were prepared.
I was prepared. I have always been a student of anything I can get my hands on. Not just scriptures, but if it sparks my interest, I want to know, I want to study. And I had been studying some things. I did not have the answers. Did you have a clipboard?
Because that's the picture I have in my head right now.
I didn't have. I'm pretty sure I had a Thompson Chain Reference Bible, good old King James Version. But I went and I brought my question and he gave a real quick abbreviated answer. And it wasn't good enough for me. And please understand, I wasn't being rebellious. Truly, I wasn't. You weren't
challenging him. You were trying to understand.
I wanted to understand. And so I said, yes, but, and I went to another place in scripture. Here it says that, and I don't even remember at this point the details of that conversation, like which scriptures it was, but it had to do with women's roles in the church. And he said, well, blah, 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 blah. And I said, yes, but. And he said, stand up. And I stood in front of a congregation, a few hundred people.
19, 20 years old.
My parents don't attend this church. So, to be clear, I'm without headship in this environment.
Were you married yet?
I may have been married, or else I was engaged. Because I married at 20 years old. I was in a committed relationship with my husband at this point, and he knew enough about me to know what was about to happen.
Right.
And I am told what you need to do for a while is put your Bible away and don't you worry about this. That's why God has given you me as a pastor. I'm going to tell you.
He was basically saying you have all this information without understanding, so shut up.
That's what he told me. And admittedly, Aimee, at 19 years old, I lacked understanding, but I was seeking.
You were seeking
for that understanding. He felt like I was being rebellious. And basically, he prescribed for me no further study of scriptures. I've been given a pastor in this, and I will tell you what thus saith the Lord. And he actually said those words.
How dangerous is that?
He basically told us he was the mouthpiece of God.
Ooh.
And that I would just need to know what he said in the scriptures. Well, that didn't sit well with me.
I can imagine not.
And
I can imagine, knowing you, I can imagine it didn't sit well with you. It made you angry, but it probably grieved you a little bit too.
It made me so sad.
Yeah.
Because I had this hunger. And then I felt shamed.
Sure. For doing what was put in you by God to seek, study, to show yourself approved, to seek true knowledge.
Right.
Looking for wisdom.
And I just began to beg God just to, divinely instill me with faith. And what it made me do, Amber, was study more, but stop asking questions.
Which is so dangerous.
It's a very dangerous thing.
Because number one, we need the word. We need the Holy Spirit, but we also need each other. There's so much value at sitting across. I feel like it's super dangerous that people just go to church on Sunday and that's it. Mm-hmm. Like, you've got to have people that you're doing life with, that you're discussing it. Like, if all you do is go out with friends after church on Sunday and discuss the sermon, start there.
Right.
Start with processing that out. We have to have that.
Well, I want to know.
Right.
I want to know the one I love, and I want to know the one that loves me.
Right.
And even Brian and I have been together 30 years this week.
Girl.
And it floors me, and it excites me, and it also hurts my feelings a little bit when I learn something I never knew about him. Because I'm like, oh, I thought I knew everything.
Like you've been cooking a dish all these years. He's like, I don't even like that.
Right. And then I just want to know more.
Right.
And so I've got to be in this word, and I've got to see for myself. And I think for so long, we as women have been taught to not see for ourselves.
Right.
But to just take it from, I'm standing here, I am like petting my Bible. Wish y'all could see that. I think we as women have been told for years and years that we don't have to experience for ourselves, that we can just, kind of a take my word for it thing. And quite frankly, that's not good enough for me. And it
shouldn't be good enough for anybody.
No. But just as I had this one man discourage me from gaining my own witness, I had another man in my life who fostered that desire to know. I remember a radio, like a little alarm clock bedside radio, breaking at our house when I was a child. And my dad had a little workshop in the back. And when he determined that he could not fix it, that he would just replace it, he invited me to see what it was about. Do you remember original MacGyvers?
Absolutely.
We would play MacGyver.
MacGyver took, for those of you who don't know, took a stick of gum, a match, and a paperclip and made a bomb.
Right. And saved the world.
Save the world.
But we would go into my dad's little shed, and I remember all the little baby food and pickle jars full of different types of screws and nuts and bolts and things like that. And I remember taking that little radio apart to see how it worked. And he did not stand over me and go, well, that's this, and just take my word for it that that's what it does. It was look and see. Look and see.
I love that.
And of course, my mom was, of course, supportive of that. But my dad was always one of those try it and find out sort of dads. And I don't mean like in a bad way, but so Dad, what happens if I put double the baking soda in the recipe? Try it and see. And I felt like so injured by being told not to look and see. But on the other hand, it did a good thing because it spurred me on to want to find out. But I think that has happened so much in our lives as women, especially my generation, was that you should be seen and not heard, that we didn't question that. It was like, because I said so. And how many times have you heard that? And how many times have we, even as parents or as women, said that? But I think as women, it's up to us now to foster that healthy why in one another.
Right. So then go to that, because there is there is something so incredibly valuable about female friendship that I believe that is lost in our culture. Number one, nothing sleeps. The world is continuing when we rest. We wake up, and honestly, what's the first thing you do?
Oh, I'm checking that phone.
You're looking at what happened last night while you were trying to rest. Mm-hmm. And everything in life is filtered. Everything. Right. And so it forces and forms in us, whether we realize it or not, a competitive nature with other people that we were never meant to compete with.
Right.
And so much of what is considered friendship is false because there is I am your friend for what I can get out of you.
Right.
But I don't fully trust you. And when you speak into my life, I see it as critical and not as necessary for my growth. Unfortunately, that starts very early. Girls are super catty. And you're right. Like, I look at where I'm at in the season I'm at in life. And if I gathered all of my closest friends up, and of course you'd be included in that, none of you girls are alike. But yet you all have the most beautiful souls. You're all so strong, independent, quirky, and you all bring something different to the table.
Right.
And the value in that to me is together, it's a force to be reckoned with. I am who I am because of the women I surround myself with.
Right. Right.
Now, if I look at you and I see what you've accomplished and what you do and how you handle things and the way you entertain and the way that you use words I have to look up when you're not around. Like, I'm like, oh, that's intimidating. But what that does is instead of intimidating me, it makes me feel safe because I know you're not doing that to one up me or intimidate me, but you're doing it to say, this is who I am. And who I am supports and validates who you are.
Well,
it's so valuable.
That's very important on the flip side, because for a long time, I wasn't comfortable
with me.
Well, no, please understand this is not a boast, but there was a long time in my life where I wasn't comfortable being a smart girl, you know? And so I wouldn't use big words.
Back in the day, it was not cool to be smart at all.
Right.
Like if you were smart in school, you don't want people to know it.
Right.
Because being smart was dumb, which makes no sense.
I know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But it was like implied if you were smart, then maybe you weren't attractive or something like that.
Right.
And of course you want to be attractive, but the whole point of that was to say this, that it's important to find people that you can be yourself with.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of what's happening. We could talk for days on the good and the bad, the do's and the don'ts, you know, the merits or lack thereof in social media. But I think what it boils down to is we lack some authenticity in our life. And what that looks like, even for people who don't have social media, is we tend to silo our lives.
Right.
And you say, why is that? And you're like, well, I have my church friends over here and I act one way with them. And I have my neighborhood friends over here. And these girls over here in this silo, they're the girls I went to college with. And we basically take on different personalities when we're in with these different groups. You know, what that is a huge lack of authenticity, because is only one of those silos my true self? No.
They all are you.
My true self is all of them.
But see, if you keep yourself siloed, you can't tell your story.
Absolutely not.
Do you know what I'm saying? And so the value of going back to these women in the life of Jesus, they were all in everywhere. But when we are all in everywhere, we also set ourselves up for ridicule.
Absolutely.
We set ourselves up for smaller circles.
Right.
We set ourselves up for people who don't understand us to form opinions and scream those opinions from the mountaintops, you know?
Right.
And I just think what we can learn, you and I and our friends listening can learn from this is from the beginning of time, it was put in us not only an individual distinct calling, not men versus women, but you alone have a call, a distinct purpose on this earth that's bigger than sucking air. And part of that is to live out the fullness of the call of God in your life. Figure that out. Spend the rest of your life figuring that out. But tell your story and tell your story proudly. The good, bad, ugly. Tell that story, because that story is what's making a difference.
But when you're telling your story, let's not forget to hear others' stories as well.
Absolutely.
And let's go ahead. You know, you talked about filters. Our lives are so filtered. People are filtering their lives and presenting their best selves, their highlight reels, if you will. But let's take off our own filter and let's stop receiving other people's stories through our own filter.
Right.
It's
wow,
like,
that's so good.
Reading an email, if I open an email and I am just in a really cranky mood that day, I will read that as a cranky email. I just always will. I have noticed looking at social media, if I'm feeling cute and perky and feeling really pretty one day, everybody on social media looks prettier that day. We apply our own filters to life.
Right.
We just do. It's a lot of vulnerability to just remove those from our lives and just share our stories and receive the stories of others.
Right. So good.
You can only operate in what you know. So no more.
Right. And how do we learn? We learn through relationship.
That's right.
We learn through sharing those stories. We learn through, how many things have you learned from parents and grandparents and great-grandparents of stories of their life, through their hardships, through their triumphs, from sitting at their feet and hearing their experience? And it shaped who you are. It's impacted who you are. And you're like, I'm going to look at life different. I never thought about it from that perspective. And it flips the script and it opens up a whole new window that you didn't realize was there.
Oh, absolutely. But another way we can do that is open up that friend group.
Yeah.
Take your neighborhood friend and invite her into your luncheon with your church friends. Mix those together. I was telling you about this earlier today. It occurred to me before COVID, and then COVID derailed this, and hopefully I can get back to that I have all these good friends that are exceptional women, and it's a shame that they don't know each other. And so let's just invite them to come together. And to be honest, it can be uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable because you go back to grade school. And you have your two friends. What if these two people you love so much, hit it off and then they go play without you?
Right.
We've got to get past that.
So this happened a little bit recently in my life. I have some friends. We have a few things in common, but the main thing that we have in common is we all have children the same age, particularly our youngest sons. We all have, it's these 4 women. We have 4 boys who are all going to be seniors this year. And our boys are friends. And then we are by default friends. And so what has happened over the years is our families have become friends.
Right.
And then I have Brian's cousin who lives in our neighborhood, and we are very, very good friends. And then I have a lady who cuts my hair, and we're friends, So I have these.
Yeah, the people that cut your hair are super important people in your life.
Let's just be honest.
It's brain surgeons and hairdressers are on the same level.
It's like
I'm trusting you with my life.
Who knows me the best? My husband, my children, my hairdresser. But I have all these women from different groups, and one of the women back during COVID said, "Hey, have you ever done a book club?" And we were like, "No." And I'm not much of a fiction reader, and they were going to do some fiction books, and I thought this is something new. This is going to get me out of my comfort zone. And the first couple of meetings, I was like, how's this going to work? Because I have these women from my different silos of my life that are coming together in one group. And it's turned into a really beautiful thing.
Sure.
And I say this from my own perspective. My friend on this side and my friend on this side are now friends in their own right. And I love that.
And I think I can see people listening to this and thinking, there is no way. But you know what's amazing about that? Because in your biggest triumphs, you've got an army of celebration. In your biggest weakness and failure, you've got an army of support.
Absolutely.
And it's not a bunch of people trying to support separate. They can lock arms. And there's that, I think, is the enemy wants to keep that from happening because he knows when we're unified, when we allow our insecurities to go to the back burner and we allow people to come together, it's a force to be reckoned with.
Something that I hear at our church very often, I want to give credit to whoever said this the first time, but honestly, I don't know who it is. I just know that I heard it at church. But they said life moves at the speed of connections. And I want a full life. And so I don't want to heap all these connections to myself, but let's form a web,
Yeah.
Let's make these 3-banded cords that the Bible talks about that aren't easily broken.
Right.
When we moved to Houston about 10 years ago from a very small town in Alabama, I was in what is now the 3rd largest city in America suddenly. and surrounded by millions of people and have never felt more lonely in all my life. And I was like, how can this be that in this huge city with all these millions of people that I would feel so profoundly lonely? And as time went on, I began to make connections, and my connections began to make connections. And what has happened is there's this web now. And God showed me this in the Bible. There's a scripture that says he sets the lonely in families. And I'm sorry, I'm terrible at references, so I can't tell you exactly where that is, but look that up. It says he sets the lonely in families. And that has become kind of the theme of my life here.
Psalm 68:6.
He has set me in a family. And some of my family members, air quotes, don't even know that they're in the same family, but they're my family.
Right.
And I'm seeing my story unfold. And if you're out there and you're like me, you know, for all these 47 years, I have wondered, what is my story? Do I have a testimony? What is my witness? And the thing is this, if you're like me and you're wondering what your story is and what your testimony is, get in scriptures.
Absolutely. You'll find it there.
You're in there.
Absolutely. You
Read
are.
the stories.
Yeah.
Really get to know some of these women and men, but get to know the stories of this Bible and let it be a mirror. Let it reflect. Let yourself be a reflection of the Bible, and you will see your story unfold.
Yeah. I think that it's also important to mention that God does bring some people into our life for a chapter.
Absolutely.
The world is not over if they don't move on to the next chapter.
That's right.
There was something to be learned, the good and the bad. And it's recognizing that if the Word of God is always evolving, and it's part of our story. And the more we grow, the Word of God's not evolving, we're evolving.
Right.
But the Word of God is always evolving in us. As we grow, our friends grow. Our who's in our circle grows. Our story grows, and it changes and it shifts and it takes on a new look, and it's in a new season. And I think that we have to give ourselves the margin, the permission to say, okay, what's this next season look like? And be okay with experiencing people that are different than you.
Absolutely.
That have different things of interest, okay, Aimee, you're one of my dearest friends. We have very different taste in music.
Yes, we do.
Very different taste in music. And one of the things you love to do is go listen to live music. Same, but we will never go listen to live music together. That's okay.
Unless it's Queen.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. But those tickets were $90 million, so we did not go. So it's okay that we have that difference. And
absolutely.
I am so thankful that you have friends that love what you love. So I don't feel guilty. You could travel all over the nation and listen to every bit of music that you want to. And I've not lost any sleep about not being invited to that, because my answer would always be no. But that's the beauty of it. Right. Is the more God defines us, he's defining our friends, and our stories intertwine, and they mesh here and they mesh here, and we're going to spend eternity together.
Well, it's that implication that life is a tapestry.
Yes.
A tapestry is what it is because of the depths of shade and the different materials and the things that are woven together. I mean, we are not living a monochromatic existence. At least I hope you're not. I don't want that for you. It's like if salt loses its saltiness, it's like, who bleached your tapestry? Sort of thing, I want color in my life.
Yes.
I want color in my relationships.
Absolutely. And what makes it colorful is the stories that are told.
Absolutely.
So I think that today was not only fun, there's more in this particular topic. I'm still learning. I'm still growing. I'm still I'm seeing how there were women always present.
Right.
And the beauty of that is they didn't allow themselves to fade to the back, but they also did not try to stand in the place of someone else. They found their place and they stood
found
strong.
Their place. That's right.
And then they told their story.
And at the end of the day, if anything that we've talked about encourages you or me or anybody listening to take a deeper look, then we've done what we were called to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you walk away going, what's my story? Great question.
Mm-hmm.
Go find out.
Right.
Go find out and begin to talk to the people in your life. And if you don't have community, there's go find community.
Go find
the Bible
community.
says he who has friends must show himself friendly.
Right.
Go and find, and do not settle for people that are just like you.
Right.
Surround yourself with somebody that knows more than you, that it has life experience that you don't have. They don't need to look like you. They don't need to. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you, my very dearest friends, we have so much not in common.
Right.
But we also have a lot in common. And that's what makes it amazing.
Well, don't write off people who are a lot older than you or a lot younger than you or in a different socioeconomic position than you or a different race than you. Look in all areas. I remember years and years and years ago, we had 3 kids. Our life was very much that of busy young parents. We were just trying to pay our bills, sort of thing. And this young couple started coming to our church, and we were trying to make them feel included. So we're hanging out with them. We're going to dinner. We're inviting them. And another well-meaning lady pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I think they probably need to make friends with
people their age."
Yeah, people their age that don't have children yet. They were newly married and didn't have any kids. Young professionals, and I'm a stay-at-home mom. Do
you think that lady pulled you aside because she wanted you to be her friend?
Oh, I don't know. I honestly think
I'm like everybody's got an agenda.
I think she was trying to protect me. I think that she saw me trying really hard and didn't want me to be hurt. But I want you to know that she was very wrong.
Yeah.
And this young couple, Catherine and Brad, Catherine became one of my best friends at that season in my life. And it wasn't very long after that Catherine and Brad's family started to grow, and their first child was born, and then their second child was born. And I got to be there in some moments. And I like to think that I was valuable to Catherine in that season of life.
Yeah.
And I easily could have walked away from that because we were so very different.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And even though I still consider Catherine a friend today, but she lives 700 miles away, and we're not spending long hours talking and going on long walks. And we're at very different seasons in our life, but still such a valuable thread in my own tapestry and a valuable chapter in my own story. And I'm going to send this to you, Catherine. I hope you listen.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Well, thank you, Aimee, for joining me again today. And thank you guys for listening. Make sure you stick around for the extra shot. I'm Amber Noble, and you've been listening to Grounds for Conversations. To ensure you don't miss our next podcast, make sure you subscribe, rate, and review. Don't forget to hang around for an extra shot. All right, welcome back to an extra shot. Again, I have my friend Aimee Raggio with us, and today's extra shot is so funny to me.
I'm so excited.
I love the extra shots because I love that for the first time in my life, nobody can stop me from expressing my brain. It's like, guess what's going on up in here? Okay, so today what I want to talk about is the do's and don'ts of vacationing. Now, I grew up where our vacations were going to grandma's. There wasn't a lot of, hey, let's go to Myrtle Beach, or hey, let's go to Disney. It was like, hey, let's go to Oklahoma. It's like, what? What? Really? But because I didn't know any better, it was amazing. So and then when we had kids, we were in ministry in Central Arkansas. All of my family was in Texas. All of my husband's family was in Ohio. And so for the earlier years of my kids' life, most of their vacationing consisted of going to grandma's also.
Right.
We've obviously done other vacations and stuff since, but like there's something to be said about the do's and don'ts on vacations. I just want to talk about that. I didn't give you much of a heads up on this, but this is world. This is what I love about Aimee. My favorite thing to do with Aimee is to poke the bear and sit back and watch, because I can say things and I'm like, oh, and I know because she'll say, here's the thing. And when she says, here's the thing, for me, that's this is going to be good. So I just told you just a little bit ago, by the way, this is what we're talking about. So vacationing do's and don'ts. Let's talk. What are your what are your thoughts?
I'm going to go right out of the gate with a huge pet peeve. It is this. It is the people who are bent on not looking like a tourist.
But why? Like, let me tell you something. If you're going to New York, you get your I Love New York t-shirt.
You absolutely
get
your
out of that.
Listen, we have been very privileged to really see a lot of the world and travel with our kids. We did this through a program where we share our home with complete strangers. You know, we swap houses for vacations.
That was what my first marriage was like. No, I'm just kidding.
Anyway, so this home exchange program has been fantastic. And
you guys have been all over Europe and everything.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I have found out is one of the best ways to see another city, especially a tourist trendy city, is to hop on that red bus with the open top. You know, the ones I'm talking about. Go on and buy that city pass and jump on the bus. Don't you worry about looking like a tourist, because I promise you this, the locals know you are not going to dress yourself out of looking like a tourist.
No.
The fact that you're breaking your neck to see everything gives you away.
Right.
And
and let's be honest. If you're from the South, it's obvious that you're from the South.
Oh.
You could probably get away, but if you're from the North, look, I can spot somebody from the North a mile away. Like, we just look like where we're from, and that's okay. Own it.
Well, and let's just admit this. Whatever you think another city that you've never to has been like, whatever you think it's like, and whatever you think the people there are like, you're wrong. And the first time I went to New York, oh man, I sweated this for weeks up to this trip. I'm thinking everybody there is going to be really stylish, and the women are wearing heels. And so,
did you think everybody was going to be mean?
No, I just thought they were going to be super fashion forward. And like, I just thought it was going to be like so hip and so trendy. And I just thought everybody in New York knows everything there is about fashion. That's why I really thought it was going to be fashion forward. And if you know me very well, you know I'm not very concerned with fashion. So I had really worried about this trip, and I had planned outfits, and I had really impractical shoes. You
took heels to walk around New York.
I did.
Did you watch Gossip Girl or something and think that's the way it was supposed to be?
I just had never, at this time when I went to New York, our vacations consisted of year A and year B. And those just alternated back and forth. And year A was Gulf Shores and year B was Gatlinburg.
Okay, that's hysterical.
And it was either or.
If you were going back to New York, what shoes would you wear today?
What would I take now?
Yeah.
I would take some really good walking tennis shoes. And I would probably take like some stretchy pants and some long shirts.
Stretchy pants.
I got to New York, and what I noticed was the only people dressed like what I thought New Yorkers would be dressed like were the tourists. All the real New Yorkers were wearing sensible shoes and black overcoats. And
when you say sensible shoes, you know what I think of? I think of SAS shoes.
I think of Skechers.
I think of those shoes that like elderly people wear. Nothing wrong with that. Rock them SAS, girls. But
look, you don't have to have facial plantar. What is it called? Plantar fasciitis, but one time.
Okay, I heard that phrase the first time, and I thought it was a type of peanut. I'm not joking. I was like, is that a brand of peanuts?
You're making me emphysema cough. It's bad.
Okay, so fun fact, I feel like people do that when they come to Texas. I've had people, and I'm not going to say their names, but in our family, that Phil's family, okay, because they're not from Texas. They think that it's a true story. They're like, do y'all ride horses everywhere you go? I'm like,
oh, I know.
Why would we do that? Like, I'm not riding a horse anywhere if I don't have to. We live in a neighborhood. Fun fact. We do not own a horse. They think that all the men wear bolos. Do you know what bolos are?
I know, those little leather ties.
Yes, that have the big silver thing they think that everybody wears. They think that we all look like Woody from Toy Story. I'm like, why do you think that? And now I am a Southern girl. I love makeup.
Sure.
And I think Phil's family, precious, amazing people. I think it took them a while to figure out that even if we're going to be just hanging out with family, I'm going to have my full face on. Yeah. But I grew up with a grandma that was, I I mean, she was cooking breakfast with her face on.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just what you do.
Well, I think that's a personal thing and not necessarily a regional thing.
And it's not an insecurity. It's not, it's like, I like it.
Right.
Like no shame in that. I might have jeans and a grungy t-shirt on, but my face is going to be done.
Yeah.
And if that's bothering you, check yourself.
Oh yeah. That's a you thing, not a me thing.
Not a me thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So other vacation things. Okay. This is so funny to me, but I don't ever wake up and go, baby, let's go to Cracker Barrel. I don't ever crave Cracker Barrel. I don't even think about Cracker Barrel. But if we're driving more than 2 hours, all of a sudden there's this weird desire to go eat breakfast at Cracker Barrel.
I think here's my theory on Cracker Barrel. First of all, I do like Cracker Barrel.
I do too, but I don't ever think about it. We live in Houston. We have everything at our fingertips. That's not my choice.
No. Plus, we don't want to go to Cracker Barrel because all the tourists. Now, here's my theory on Cracker Barrel and restaurants like Cracker Barrel. It is consistency. I know that any Cracker Barrel in America, are there Cracker Barrels outside of America?
I don't know.
I've never seen one in all of our travels that's outside of America. But in any Cracker Barrel in the world that I go into, I know that I'm going to get.
What do you get?
Well,
do you order off the breakfast or the lunch menu?
It depends. I mean, I'll order like a lot of different. I used to order this grilled chicken tenderloin sandwich, and then they changed it, and I don't like that now.
I don't like that. I'm a person that if they're known for their breakfast, you should not veer off of breakfast.
But you know that no matter what Cracker Barrel you go into, the biscuit you order is going to be the same.
Girl, their hash brown casserole is my favorite.
It's consistency, and so there's when you're in an area where you don't know anybody, especially if you're in a different country and you don't speak the language or whatever, there's something comforting about going where you know.
Yes. It's like Cheers. Everybody knows your name.
Yeah.
Can I tell you that I do not like going to a Cracker Barrel and I get somebody with that brown vest or that brown apron on and they only have 1 star? Oh. I want Myrtle that's got like 8 stars because she's been there since they opened.
Don't you feel like if they gave customer stars on how many visits they went to Cracker Barrel, like
I would be platinum.
I kind of feel like I don't really need a menu.
I don't. I can already tell you what I want.
But it's consistency. Also, it goes back to, so back when I was a kid and we were vacationing, it was because you could buy an audiobook and we would listen to these audiobooks in the car, and then you could stop at Cracker Barrel and trade your audiobook in.
That's right.
And that was phenomenal.
Well,
also they had the good candy.
They did have the
old school candy.
Now, I will tell you, you can't walk through my house and go find anything that I bought at a Cracker Barrel store that I decorate with. But when I'm in Cracker Barrel, there's something that they put through the air or whatever. I think I need that in my home.
You have just issued a challenge to me. I'm going to sneak Cracker Barrel items into your home.
No, well, I'm going to know. I'm going to know it's Cracker Barrel.
No, you won't.
Now, at Christmas, their Cracker Barrel Christmas is a whole nother mood.
Christmas decorations.
I love their Christmas stuff, but I will buy things, and by the time we get back from vacation, I'm looking at this thing in that brown bag, and I'm like, why do I have this? What am I going to do with this? And I usually end up giving it as a gift.
But look, let's be honest. You mamas with little babies with all the trendy clothes, you're sleeping on Cracker Barrel. They got some cute little baby outfits in there. It's some really cute stuff.
And I've bought some birthday gifts in there before.
Especially, I had like a little farm baby. Cole just looked like a little farmer. And so we always loved their little John Deere stuff there for babies.
Absolutely. Okay. I also think that what's funny about Cracker Barrel is I always get sad when they don't have their fireplace lit. I don't care if it's 250 degrees outside. You have a fireplace of that magnitude, that bad boy needs to be lit.
I know, but if all the Cracker Barrels in America kept their fire going 7 days a week, 365 days a year, they are burning some wood.
It's a big fireplace.
They are burning some wood.
I don't crave Cracker Barrel except for when I'm on vacation.
I'm
about to, you're like, we're going right now. I love, and this is going to, some people say that's so white trash. Call me whatever name you want to call me. I love a good Waffle House.
Oh, I like Waffle House too.
I didn't say like. I love Waffle House. I had some friends that got me. Well, it's consistency. It's consistency. They built a new Waffle House by us, brand new from the ground up, and it looks like it's been there for 40 years. I don't know if they import old grease. I don't know what they do. I love it. I know what I'm getting there.
A little shot of grease in the paint.
Yes. And I had some friends that they got me a Waffle House gift card, and I was like, you know me and you love me.
Okay.
I love this.
Right now, talking about Waffle House, I can almost taste scrambled eggs with a little
bacon grease.
There's this hint of ashtray.
You're not even allowed to smoke in them anymore.
I don't care. But all the people that come in there have been smoking.
Not me.
So it's carryover.
I'm just smoking hot. No, I'm just kidding.
What are you talking about? Think of like an old Cracker Barrel one.
Oh,
I mean, an old Waffle House that's like the one by the airport that's been there a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna.
They hadn't changed out that AC filter
ever. Okay, so vacation.
All right,
we know about Cracker Barrel and the tourism.
Mm-hmm.
What about the stops? Like, I love about Texas. I love Buc-ee's.
Mm-hmm.
I love that it's a whole experience in itself. I am married to a man that doesn't want to stop.
Buc-ee's is like a snack theme park, though.
It is, and also it's like Cracker Barrel. They have stuff for your home that you're like, I need that. I need that $475 Lazy Susan.
Like, they're going to put a beaver or a Texas flag or star on everything.
Everything.
I just, you know what?
They have the cleanest bathrooms in America.
Buc-ee's is one tanning bed shy of being its own small town.
Mm-hmm.
I'm serious.
You better believe it.
If you could tan
one tanning bed shy. Yes, if they had a dry cleaners and a tanning bed, right. You better believe it. I just move into Buc-ee's.
Tan while you were there. Like, I'm serious.
So I was down in Galveston County and stopped at Buc-ee's,
mm-hmm.
and they had a bin of sweet potatoes. This sounds crazy. I was like, these are beautiful sweet potatoes. I bought a bunch of sweet potatoes, brought them home, and Phil's like, where'd you get these sweet potatoes? I said, Buc-ee's. And he just looked at me like he was so proud. I don't know. We never had a conversation about it, but it was the look. But they had produce there.
Did you buy a chow chow?
Yes.
Go with it? Because yes,
because they have it in the cans. It's so good. Or the jars.
I do have something negative to say about Buc-ee's, and correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't found a Buc-ee's that sells boiled peanuts.
That's not a thing here.
Okay.
That's an Alabama, Mississippi thing.
There are 2 Buc-ee's in Alabama now.
Look, boiled peanuts, good boiled peanuts come from hole in the wall. They're not going to come from a Buc-ee's.
But Buc-ee's sells a lot of local stuff in their store.
But boiled peanuts, so they sell local stuff. They sell local, like, house stuff. Their food, that stuff is a chain. It's a Buc-ee's thing. You want good boiled peanuts, you stop off at a gas station that you think there might have been a meth.
If you don't have
a
homemade sign with the words boiled peanuts spelled incorrectly,
I sure say it's got to be spelled wrong. It's got to be spelled wrong.
Yeah. But let me get off talking about travel here. If you're traveling through Alabama, a little north of Birmingham, and you are even a little bit redneck, let me hook you up. There is an exit just outside of town. And at this exit is an outlet mall, a Buc-ee's.
I don't understand why there's Buc-ee's in different states than Texas.
Oh, no, there's 2 there.
It's not fair.
There's an outlet mall, a Buc-ee's, a Bass Pro Shop, and the Barber Motorsports Museum at one exit. Tell me that I just did not make redneck people's heads explode.
Okay, but let's go back to Buc-ee's is a Texas thing. I don't understand.
Well, people from Texas moved to Alabama. I don't know what to do.
So they opened a Buc-ee's.
Well, I'm going to look. This may get me kicked out of Texas right here. And here's how it goes down. Texas A&M joined the SEC.
Okay.
And we don't have professional sports in Alabama, or we didn't when I lived there. So college football was about all that we had to entertain ourselves with.
Alabama's kind of got a pretty big thing going for them.
I mean, and so Alabama in the SEC in college football, like Alabama is SEC football. And so then Texas A&M joined the SEC. And the next thing you know, we have Buc-ee's in Alabama. I'm just saying, it's okay to say you want to be us.
I don't really know how to respond to that.
Or I will say this as experience. I'm going to go out here on a limb and say I am from Alabama, but I've been in Texas 10 years and I consider this my home now. And so I'm going to just go on out there and say I'm a Texan.
Good for you.
What
a beautiful thing to say.
Texas wants everybody to be Texans.
Not everybody. That's wrong. That's a false statement because they want everyone.
Unless you're from California. We don't. I'm just kidding.
You know what? And I think that Texans want everybody to think like Texans.
Oh, that I think that, or
I
Texans.
don't think they want them all to be Texans. I think they want the world to think like
Texans want everybody to want to be Texans.
Yes. Well, Texas is the only state that has every mall, everywhere. They have stores that sell only Texas stuff. And you know who buys it?
There are Texas stores.
Texans.
Oh, listen, Texans love Texas like Kanye loves Kanye. And
that is the truest statement I've ever heard.
Native sons, Lyle Lovett, sings a song that says, "That's right, you're not from Texas, but Texas wants you anyway."
I'll love it.
It's just weird, man.
Back to vacations. Give me something else.
Back to vacations.
Let me tell you, when my mom was growing up, she told me that they used to, for vacation, wear paper clothes. And I said, like a paper doll? And she just looked at me like that was a dumb question. I said, well, what happens if they got wet? And she said, we just throw them away.
Do they have them on Amazon?
I don't know, but I didn't believe her. And I Googled it, and it is a real thing. It is a real thing. In the 60s, in the 50s and 60s, they had paper clothes.
Were they specifically marketed for vacation?
I think so. They were travel clothes because then you didn't really have to pack a lot. It was just easy, and you threw them away when you were done.
Okay. For the record, I just opened Amazon and I typed in paper clothes, and the little drop down said paper clothes for adults, paper clothes for kids.
I had paper dolls when I was a kid. It just blew my mind. Okay. Other vacation things. This is something I don't.
Okay.
If you're traveling, do not, we already talked about Cracker Barrel. I understand why we do it, but go places that are not chains.
Absolutely.
Eat somewhere that you cannot eat at home. And you know what? The beautiful thing is you have the internet. Google local hotspots. Try local, I love diners, drive-ins, and dives. And I find out, have they been to this area? I'm going to that place. Find things that you can't eat at home. It's vacation for a reason. You're taking a break from your reality.
And especially if you're traveling outside the United States, find out what they eat there and eat that.
Yeah, but you got to be careful because you get over there in some places, you end up getting something. You get But
here's what I'm saying. Don't go to Wisconsin and not eat cheese unless you're lactose intolerant. You know what I'm saying?
That's inside the United States, though.
If you've ever been to New York and didn't eat a hot dog from a cart on the street, you didn't do it right.
Right. But when you're going to another country, you have to be a little careful. You don't just eat whatever you see.
But are you going to Italy and not eating pasta?
No. I'll eat pasta anywhere.
Right.
I love it.
Are you going to Canada for good Mexican food? No.
What did you eat in Canada?
Caribou? I don't know. Find out. Well blubber. Didn't we talk about this?
Well blubber.
I don't know. People in Canada, what are you eating up there? Oh, don't they have those places called Wawas up there that are like Buc-ee's?
Wawa. Like Barbara Wawa?
No, it's like kind of like I'm sure, a roadside stop, like with all the places to eat.
Yeah.
But
okay. So you should always eat a non-normal, like non-chain.
Sure.
Spread out.
Although I will tell you this, in our traveling all over the world, at least for one time, we do like to eat at a McDonald's in a foreign country.
Dude,
at least one.
McDonald's in foreign countries hit different.
Listen, we went to McDonald's at the
bottom. McDonald's or McDonald's?
McDonald's in McDonald's.
Do you spread that A out? McDonald's? Or do you go McDonald's?
I say McDonald's.
Okay, just asking.
Okay.
There's not a right. You're okay. You're safe here.
That MC is a Scottish thing that's short for MAC, and it actually means son of.
Have I ever told you you're my smart friend?
Oh, no. I like that. No. So we ate at McDonald's at the bottom of the Spanish Steps in Rome. And listen, it's 2-story, and when you walk in, there's an espresso bar.
Yes, ma'am. They have that in Argentina too. It's fantastic.
And then there's another little dessert bar over there, and they've got little tarts and macarons.
Yes.
And all these things.
Petit fours. It's the best.
And you go upstairs, and it's like the most beautiful architecture. And so it's basically like a little mini free museum.
Well, because you think about it this way. McDonald's in other countries are it's a neat thing.
Sure.
For us, it's just like, I'll just go hit the dollar menu on your way,
But just go the once.
Yes.
You just one time's good.
When I was working I was in Argentina for about 10 days, And there was one right by the school that I was working at. And they had their coffee bar. It's totally separate from the rest of their restaurant, like the one in Spain. Girlfriend, it was fantastic. And I ended up every day on break just walking across the street to that McDonald's because that coffee was amazing.
Yeah.
And it's so unfortunate because I don't think that McDonald's has great coffee. There was amazing. And then they had things on their menu that we don't have.
Right.
And when I lived in Costa Rica as a kid, the fried chicken on the menu at McDonald's was so stinking good. Like you'd get whole pieces of fried chicken. And I'm like, it's like KFC and McDonald's had a baby in another country and I'm here for it. I loved it.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. We were in Australia and they have this little fast food restaurant over there. I think it's called Nando's. I may have that name wrong.
Nobody's going to know. You can call it whatever you want.
But it's like a fast food chicken restaurant, but it would not qualify as fast food over here. Like it was like Jamaican jerk style chicken all season. And I want to say it might've been Cuban. They had like black beans and rice. Girl, we were like, this is fast food?
I want to go there right now. Except for Australia is the one place in the world I don't want to go because I feel like everything on the island wants to kill you. Phil loves Australia.
Oh.
He's been multiple times. He wants me to go. I don't want to go.
I will be perfectly honest with you. Like Melbourne was beautiful. Sydney was beautiful. We only went to that side of Australia. But to me, in my mind, I've never been to an Asian country, and Sydney was probably as close as I'll ever be to an Asian country because I was overwhelmed by the Asian population there. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. Don't get me wrong, but like there's whole massive sections of town where nothing is in English.
Yeah.
And by the way,
really, like all of the writing and everything. Wow.
China, yeah. And so I told Brian, I was like, wow, like parts of Sydney feel like what I would imagine parts of Asia would be like. So, you were talking about that McDonald's coffee being so good, and that brings me back around to Cracker Barrel. And we may disagree on this. That is one of the things I'm a fan of at Cracker Barrel is I think they have really good coffee.
I'm not with you on that.
But it's
see, this goes back to our friendship. We all agree on everything. That's okay.
And that's okay. But it's Royal Cup coffee, and I like it.
Okay, so let me tell you a little secret I learned.
Speaking of coffee,
from traveling, is that if you go somewhere and the coffee is not great, if you'll put just a tiny bit of salt in it before you add cream or sugar, that salt will cut that bitterness. And I have to do that some at Cracker Barrel. I know that but I love it. I can't wait to order a cup of coffee there. It's just not like if it's not my favorite.
It's not your favorite.
Yes.
Well, and here's my thing too about traveling. Find a locally owned coffee shop.
Yes.
Although I will say,
do Starbucks.
Brian and I were in London and we had gone to the Tower of London, like, where they take people's heads off and stuff. But there's the Tower Bridge, the bridge that's all painted blue. I think people think that's the London Bridge and it's not.
All the London bridges fell down.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But the Tower Bridge, right at the base of the Tower Bridge is a 2-story Starbucks. And you order downstairs and you go up this spiral staircase and it's just glassed in all the way around. And you're literally drinking your coffee under the Tower Bridge. And I just remember like the views are gorgeous and who knows what Starbucks pays to be there.
Right.
And I'm not a person who Instagrams my food or drops my location because I don't really care if people know or not. But I remember taking a picture from that second story, Brian and I sitting there having our scones and our coffee and thinking, this is the coolest Starbucks location I've ever been in my life.
So go back to the travel, find local coffee shops. You can be going through like Podunk America.
Yep.
And there's their old downtown that they're trying to restore. I guarantee you're going to find a cool little coffee shop.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. That's the other thing. Dues on vacation. Don't put yourself in a hurry. Stop and explore.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really cool towns that they're trying to revitalize and they're bringing in cool locally owned shops, cool little locally owned little coffee shops, sandwich shops. We've stopped before. We stopped at this little sandwich shop, it's coffee sandwich, and they had live music and it was cool. In this town, if you would have just stayed on the highway, you would have missed it. But we go in downtown and it was absolutely the coolest thing. I'm like, I'm so glad we stopped here. I'm so glad. And that there's some cool places in this country.
Well,
do you realize that?
And that brings another good point. Do assimilate where you're going.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, like if you're on vacation, you find yourself in a red light district, don't assimilate there. But if you're in a town and you're going to be there for a few days, shop where they shop. And
Absolutely.
You know what?
I'm all about supporting local.
And don't demand that they do
offer
you. Remember
need.
this,
right.
you are the outsider. That's right. You are the guest. I have been in countries where I didn't speak the language, and I have been in some countries where they do not care that you do not speak the language, and they're not meeting you halfway. And you just, I found that out in Turkey one day. I pulled up to a very busy bakery counter at an airport, and my family was hungry. We had just been on this really long flight, and I did not speak the language, and it was extremely busy. And it was one of those places where you either order or you get out of the way. And I didn't know what anything was. It was all written in Turkish, and nobody spoke English, and they weren't meeting me halfway. And I just sort of did a point and a nod, and we wound up eating basically what was a very doughy biscuits filled with dill, and it was nasty, but that's what we ate for breakfast. But
I wouldn't have eaten.
We were just so hungry. It was like, doesn't matter. At this point, it didn't matter.
Doughy dill biscuits.
Yeah.
That sounds like a 90s like grunge band, Doughy dill biscuits.
But, we just ate it because we were hungry. But I've been in countries where they are so delighted that you're there, and they just want, they do want to help you along. And if you show any amount of attempt to speak the language, they are all over it. And you're not going to have to worry about a single thing. That consequently was how I found Spain to be.
Yeah.
And
what about, so I have this show that I have been watching when I watch TV. I don't watch a lot of TV.
Okay.
But it is, I'm watching it on Peacock.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It is Escape to the Chateau. And it's a family, a couple, so cool. They're so stinking cool, from England that went to France and bought a chateau.
Oh, wow.
And it's like 48 rooms.
Oh, my.
And they bought it for around 300,000 US American dollars, right? And they've renovated this thing. And they do weddings there, and they've renovated it all by hand. And they're just such a cool couple. And they do these food lovers weekends, and it has the orangery and all this stuff. And
hang on, I got to make myself a reservation.
Well, I had desire now to own a chateau in France. But what they said was that in France, every town, I don't know, they called it something, I'm calling it a town. Every community, in order for it to be a community, has to have a bakery, like that makes fresh bread every day.
Really?
That's all I need in life, is a loaf of fresh bread every day in a chateau.
A loaf of fresh bread in a chateau.
That's all I'm asking for. Like, I don't feel like that's asking for a lot.
I can get behind that.
I could do podcasts from my chateau, even if nobody ever listened to them. I could just sit in my chateau, eating my fresh bread, living my best life in France. But that's what they're English. So they're learning French, and they put their kids in these schools. And it's so cute to watch the people of France just embrace them and go, okay, let us help you, Yeah. So other things. What about souvenirs? How do you feel about souvenirs? Are you a big souvenir shopper? What are the kind of things you buy souvenir wise? Because listen, we're talking a lot about other countries. Like, you need to explore this country, people. Like, so when you go to different states, when you go to different countries, what do you do souvenir wise?
I am a big coffee mug person, but I look for something very specific.
Does it have the state or the country name on it?
I usually want it, or some sort of local landmark, or something that stood out to me in the trip. I want to see it reflected on that mug. I won't buy a mug if I haven't actually visited there. So I don't care. Like, if I'm in TJ Maxx and there is a really cool, Wisconsin cheese curd mug, I'm not going to buy it because I've not been to Wisconsin.
Were you the one that brought me, maybe it wasn't you, somebody brought me a Pope on a rope, but it was soap that looked like the Pope on a rope? Was that you?
It was not me, but that's brilliant.
It might have been your daughter. We got some cool stuff from y'all's.
It might have been. So when we were in Rome, we did buy my father-in-law, who is a UPC pastor, by the way, we did buy him a Pope magnet because we thought that was funny. But I look for a traditional diner mug. You know what I'm talking about?
Right. So you're a mug collector.
I will get a mug.
Okay.
And Brian and I have taken the last few years into trying to bring home a piece of art from a different country or from wherever we visit. So I like kind of strange art. And so I have these maps that are created on an old letterpress.
Okay.
And so I will usually seek one of those out. They're usually sold in like little local boutiques and stuff like that. And so I will try to find in a town. I know I can go to their website. It's called Archie's Letterpress, and I can buy the map online, but I try to find it in the town.
Okay.
So I like these.
What about
maps.
state to state? What are things that you collect?
Well, that even states. So it's usually the Archie's maps I can find like based on a city.
Okay.
I have one right now on my wall of the city of Houston.
Okay.
A letterpress map, but state to state. You know, here's the thing. I'm not much of a picture taker. I want to be in the moment, kind of experiencing it. And so consequently, I'm not much of a shopper in general.
You don't buy a lot of souvenirs?
No, I'm really more just looking for the experience.
Do you remember as kids getting postcards from people from different places? That's kind of a lost thing. That was kind of cool when you were a kid and your friend would go somewhere and send you a postcard. I collect because I have the art too. It's in my office. I've got art from all different countries and places, paintings. I love real colorful paintings. But I wear charm bracelet and I get everywhere I go, different country wise, I have a charm from that country. But if there's something, if we go on vacation, like let's say we went skiing in Colorado or we went, to Maine, like we went to Maine this last year. I got a lobster charm because we were in Maine.
Right. I do that with Christmas ornaments also.
Yeah. And I do. I would live in, you know that about me. I would live.
You would live here decorated for Christmas.
Yes. If Phil would let me, if it would not cost my marriage, I would keep Christmas year round.
Yeah.
I'm that crazy person and I have no shame in that.
Well, that's
no shame admitting that.
No, that's okay.
Any more do's and don'ts on travel?
Do's and don'ts.
I like that you said for New York, don't trip, but dress comfortably.
Absolutely.
My goodness. Like, be comfortable, but also please wear clothes.
But my thing is like, travel always with an open mind. As a Southern woman, don't go into other parts of the country with your Southern sensibility and be offended when you're not met with Southern sensibility.
Well, I feel like you're targeting that at me because
I'm targeting that at myself.
I don't know. Like when I married Phil and I went to Ohio to visit his family, they're to me, Ohio's north, but it's more really Midwest.
Yeah.
And they're not rude, but I thought they were rude. They're just more conservative. And so I'd go into the grocery store to go grab something for his mama and I would talk to people and they would look at me like I was going to steal their child. And I'm like, let me tell you something right now. First of all, your kid's not that cute. Second of all, if I was going to steal your kid, I'm not going to talk to you about it before I do. But they would tuck their kids behind them or look at me like, why are you talking to me? And I'd go to the register to check out and I'd put my stuff up on the belt and they wouldn't say, did you find everything you were looking for? Or how are you doing today? Or, hey, I like that sweater. They just look at you and they'd say hello and then they'd start scanning. And so I'm like, I'm fine. Thanks for asking. And I would just talk. And it took me a few years to realize these are some of the most precious, friendliest people in the world. They're just conservative. And just because they're not loud and they're not talking to me about what I'm buying.
Right.
Like here, you go to the store and let's say like I was at H-E-B and I found a candle that I liked while I was there and I throw it up there. It is not weird to me that the lady stops checking out my stuff or the guy stops checking out my stuff, opens that candle up
and smells it,
sniffs it and says, ooh, I like this. Or have you bought this before? I think I might try that. You are allowed to talk to me about what I'm buying unless it's a personal thing.
Right.
Like you're allowed to talk to me about what I'm buying because you're checking out my groceries. And so that's weird to me, but I agree. You're right. I had to learn that one the hard way because I expected everybody to want to be my best friend.
Well, Brian would travel to San Francisco quite a bit for business because the company he works for is based out there. And so I've been to San Francisco with him quite a few times.
I love San Francisco.
One of my favorite cities ever.
Me too. Love it.
And so people would always say to me, especially in the conservative Christian South, would say, how they're so liberal out there. Like, how can you stand it there? And my experience in San Francisco, of course, I wasn't out there working. I'm just visiting museums and shopping and things like that. But my experience was this. Everybody there was so comfortable letting people just be themselves that even though a lot of them were living lifestyles that I would not be comfortable with, my being a conservative Christian Southerner was my little bit of weird out there. And I felt like it was fully accepted, if that makes sense. And I did have the opportunity to talk with people. One day I was in a little shop and my daughter at the time was thinking of joining the Navy or joining the military. And I had a pair of socks that had a little girl saluting, Navy thing. And they were embroidered that would fight like a girl.
Oh, I love that.
So I go to the register and I'm not even sure, it doesn't matter, but I'm not even sure if it was a boy or girl, a guy or a girl. This young person who on the outside looked very differently from me said, "Are these a gift?" And I said, "Yes, I'm buying them for my daughter." And she said, "Why would you buy your daughter like military socks?" And the question was not accusatory. It was very much like, I want to understand.
I want to understand. Right.
Yeah. And I said to her, "Well, my daughter's a teenager. She's thinking of joining the military." And she said, "Why would she join the military?" And again, it was not accusatory. It was genuinely, I can't fathom this type response. And we just had a very open-minded conversation about it. Nobody accusing anybody else. And, I wasn't calling her a liberal communist and she wasn't calling me a conservative bigot. And we just had this really
great conversation
over a pair of socks. And I just remember not feeling judged.
Right.
And not being judgy and just feeling like I don't ever want to be so open-minded that my brain falls out. But I just remember feeling like this is how we can get things done.
Fact.
Is just by having a conversation.
Right. Okay. So you said something and I want to say, don't. If you are going on vacation, obviously be who you are. Your moral compass goes with you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're on vacation, there's no reason that you discuss politics and religion in every donut stop and every place you stop. Like, just don't.
Right.
If you can't be who you are and not, if I'm going to get into a political discussion with somebody, we're going to know each other pretty well.
Oh.
Who I am is what you see is what you get.
Mm-hmm.
But when I'm on vacation, I'm not there to solve your state's problems.
No.
I don't care how your state voted. I don't care about, and I know this is going to tick some people off, but it is okay. I'm fine with that. I am there to enjoy checking out of reality.
Sure.
I'm probably going to have ice cream at least 3 times today.
Right.
I may not. I'm staying somewhere where I don't make my bed because they're going to make it for me. I'm going to eat things that I normally wouldn't eat. I'm going to live differently than I do at home because I'm on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
I can go places that I don't politically line up with, and it is okay.
Mm-hmm.
I love San Francisco for the Fisherman's Wharf. I love San Francisco for the trolley carts. I love San Francisco for the architecture. I love Chinatown.
Sure.
I do not care where they stand politically because here's the thing. Right here in my own backyard, there are people that believe differently than me.
Absolutely.
That vote differently than me. Jesus has called me still to be a light and to love them. And none of that has ever been about getting into a debate.
Right.
So I can go anywhere and have the best time. And I'm so oblivious. That's part of the problem, I think. Or maybe that's good. I don't even pay attention to that stuff.
We can go out into the world as Christians and still bear witness without weaponizing the gospel and beating people about the head with it.
That's why you should buy the I Love New York t-shirt. Right?
Yeah. There's lots of beauty in New York. I remember being in New York for the first time and sending, this is how long ago this was. It was before text. I remember sending an email to my mother saying, "Mom, you would love Central Park. There's something different around every corner.
I want to go to Central Park at Christmas."
I feel like Central Park might be a vacation in and of itself. I don't believe it's something that you go to New York and drop by on the afternoon.
No.
I think, spend some time there.
Okay, biggest surprise in the United States. We're taking this too long, but I want to find out.
Biggest surprise.
Biggest surprise. It's not going to be New York and San Francisco. Biggest surprise.
Biggest surprise in the United States.
Or most underrated vacation spot. I know you love Gatlinburg. I am
not a Gatlinburg fan. I'm going to be honest with you.
Okay, I thought you were.
I am not.
You just went there a bunch.
I will tell you this. Biggest surprise to me. I think Dollywood is underrated.
Because Dolly Parton, ladies and gentlemen, is one of the most amazing women that have ever lived.
Okay. Let me just explain this.
I love Dolly so much.
You walk into Dollywood and you are...
Do you feel glamorous just for walking in to say I'm here?
It feels so wholesome. But you walk in Dollywood and you are assaulted by this smell. And let me explain to you. There are these... Have you been? There are these...
Isn't that crazy? With as much as I love Dolly, you would think that I had like stock in the place, but I don't.
There are these little stands. Of course, you know, every theme park, people, they're like making food. There are these little stands and they have these cast iron skillets that are like 3 or 4 feet across.
It's like Branson.
Yeah. And they're like cooking fried potatoes.
Yes, ma'am. That's like at Silver Dollar City. That's,
oh my gosh.
I love it. I love it.
It is fantastic.
Okay. So Dollywood, what else? Where else?
Another underrated thing.
Okay. I like Branson. I know that sounds so like, really? Are you 95 and are you making quilts? No, but maybe someday.
Yeah. I've only been one time.
Girl,
and
let me tell you.
It was a long time. It was the year I graduated high school. So.
Okay. So it's been a minute.
Yeah.
You need to go to Branson during Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
It is fantastic. It's safe. It's clean. It's wholesome. It's beautiful.
I will say this about Branson. When we were there, we had stopped at a McDonald's and we sat down and we ate. And I had a little crossbody purse and it had a credit card and all the cash I had.
And somebody stole it.
No. And we sat down and we eat and we leave and we drive an hour out into the mountains. And we stop at a little farm stand market, like on this little mountain road.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize I have left my purse at McDonald's. And so we hop back in the car and drive an hour back into town to this McDonald's. And there is a man sitting there. When I walk in the door, he jumps up and he says, I knew you would come back. I saw you leave your purse. And he had sat there and watched my purse. He didn't turn it in to the manager. He sat in the McDonald's and watched my purse.
Wow.
And everything was in it.
Wow. That's amazing.
That was my story about Branson.
There you go. Now, so when we go, I like to stay at the Hilton at Branson Landing because it's right on the landing, right there on the river. A lot of people like the big lodges and stuff that they have. I like that because I like my own space. And if I don't want to be people's friend, I don't have to be people's friend.
Right.
But I love Silver Dollar City at Christmas. I like Branson.
Mm-hmm.
I also, it's forgotten, Eureka Springs. Have you ever been to Eureka Springs?
I have not.
It's very weird. It is a weird little town.
Where is that?
So weird.
Arkansas. I think I might need to.
So bizarre, but I love it so much.
I've seen some of the most beautiful, like, pictures of hiking and stuff like that. And I always like, where is that? And it always be Arkansas.
Arkansas is a beautiful state. The other thing is right here in Texas.
Yeah.
Brenham.
Oh, I like Brenham.
I do too. We'll go for like just a couple days just to get away. I love Brenham.
Well, when we lived in Birmingham, we could ride up to Nashville and have like a long weekend. You know, it was a short drive. Right outside of Nashville is Franklin, Tennessee.
Oh, Franklin's amazing.
That is, if I do believe that the good Lord intends for me to live there at some point in my life.
Okay. I'm going to come visit all the time.
You should. And I just want to live right there in town.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know there are the big ranches and the big houses right outside of town, but I just want to live right there in town. And my whole dream is to have a little antique shop that sells chicken salad for lunch, and you can come in and sit down and have a sandwich, and by the table you just ate on. And
I love that.
I'm just going to live upstairs, and I'm going to have a little porch, and we're going to have rocking chairs.
I think I might come just live in town with you.
That's what I want to do.
I like that.
But Branson is a sleeper town. I'm not Branson. Franklin is a sleeper town. I think people are just focused on Nashville and they skip the jewel that is Franklin.
What about, I think that another area that people forget, it's very touristy, but I love it, is just Amish country, just Pennsylvania, but also, the Kidron area, Kidron, Ohio area, there it is. I love it. I love it. I think it's it's gorgeous rolling hills. I mean, I've lived in the South my whole life, so we've always had to fight stickers in the grass. They do not even grow stickers up there. They do not grow fire ants. It is something to be celebrated.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
You know, in that same area of the country is DC. I think if you're a family and you've got some elementary age children,
but DC's not a weekend. That needs to be like a long week.
That is a vacation spot.
For education purposes.
Well, it's beautiful. You can take your kids to experience a big city, and it's very clean, and you're just a very, very short train ride outside of countryside, beautiful, like Mount Vernon. It's just beautiful, and like the museums are free, and I don't know. It's beautiful.
So I think that the moral of this entire podcast is we need to get out and explore more.
Let's go on vacation now.
But do you know how many people, and this is I don't want to make this serious, but you know how many people have never even explored where they live?
You know what? I cannot tell you, people who have lived in Texas their whole lives, and they meet me and they're like, how did you hear about such and such downtown? And I'm like, that's what's made our friendship beautiful. Their own city.
That's where our friendship really started. We both moved to Houston. I was a Texas girl, but I moved to Houston not knowing the area. Right. And we've gone to different restaurants. We've gone to different, now you are the queen of museums. So you're like, Amber, there's this new exhibit. You can go check it out. We remember that taxidermy place we went downtown that was terrifying. Down. Well, because it was evil, kind of. It was kind of scary.
They did have a whole cabinet full of teeth. It was weird.
They also had all those deer butts that they had mounted and they had those big googly eyes on them, and they look like owls.
Butts?
The rear end of a deer.
Oh yes, I remember this.
And they had those big googly eyes on them, and it made it look like an owl head.
This is the first time I realized you could buy tarot cards. I didn't know. I thought like you become like a palm reader and you get some.
It made me. You went to palm reading school, and that made me very uncomfortable. I'm not gonna lie. That part made me very uncomfortable. And also, when I went to the bathroom and I came out and that skeleton fell on me. Do you remember that? I accidentally knocked because I think I was too aggressive with the door.
Remember they had that old bed in there and it had, that was a very weird store. But yes, that store burned down.
Well, but we experienced that together, and it was so funny. I came out of the bathroom and I aggressively closed that door. I guess I was just so glad I was done. And that skeleton thing fell on me, and I'm telling you, I almost gave up the ghost. It scared me so bad.
Was it a real skeleton? It could have been in that store.
It probably was. I was terrified.
We also found like one of the best taco shops in town.
Yes. Bodegas?
Yes.
Bodegas, shout out to Bodegas in the Museum District. It's
also,
so good.
You introduced me to the big Houston Farmers Market. And by the way, if you have not been to the Houston Farmers Market, they've totally redone the Farmers Market. Yes. We've got to go back again. And you introduced me to Mexican bakeries.
Girlfriend, the best one is right across the street from.
Yep. And then I introduced you to the cheese shop right down the corner.
Houston Dairy Maids. We should be getting
we are ambassadors of this great city.
So I just challenge you wherever you live. If you live in Little Rock, Arkansas, you live in a little small town, every town is proud of its town.
Absolutely.
And you can Google your town and find out places about your town. You need to go, your city, your community, and explore. Find out you do not have to leave town to go on vacation. You can go and explore your community, your city, like Green, Texas. Right. If you live in Texas and if you've not been to Green, you're missing out. If you've not floated the river, you are missing out. There are things to do in your community, in your world. You should go and support local, shop local, dress local, be all about it.
And I'm going to tell you, if you're sitting there wondering, how do you do that? How do you know what to do? I'm going to give you a little hint. If it's here we are at the weekend, we're recording on a Friday, and I don't know what day you're listening on, but if you're getting ready to go out to eat this weekend, I dare you to go somewhere that is not a chain or a franchise.
Yes. And pretend like you're somebody you're not. Have you ever done that?
Right.
Have you ever gone? I have. I will go and I will act like I'm from somewhere else and just see if it's different.
Yes.
But I do.
And if you want to get to know your small town, especially if you're a person that doesn't have kids, go to a local high school sporting event.
Okay, if somebody's been in youth ministry for 23 years, that does not sound fun to me. I'm not going to go on vacation. I'm also, okay, judge me if you want. You're like, well, you're a Christian. Okay, yes, I am. Thank you for knowing that. When I'm on vacation, I'm not going to look for a local church.
But that's your job.
It is my job. Yeah. But it's also, even if it wasn't my job, I wouldn't probably do that. I might listen to, I listen to different podcasts and things like that. I'm just not doing that.
Yeah.
But I will go to like local live music festivals and stuff.
Oh, absolutely. Local music is fantastic. We did visit a church when we went to Australia. We went to Hillsong, but that's like different. I don't know.
They've been in trouble.
I know, but this was several years ago. But still, like, it was really cool. The music was great.
If you're going to be where there's like something like that, yes. But yeah, I'm not going to do that.
But I'm telling you, in your own town tonight, go out to eat this weekend to a restaurant that is not a chain.
Did you know cities like Houston, Austin, Dallas, they have online list of places that you should eat. And I've got a list of the 100 restaurants you should eat in Houston before you die. Yeah. And I'm checking those bad boys off.
I just saw something on Pinterest. It just popped up into my Pinterest feed that said 50 things to eat in Houston before you die.
Maybe that's what it is.
The ice cream cone from here and the bread basket from here.
There is a cookie truck food truck down in Houston.
Yeah.
Over by Rice Village.
Mm-hmm.
That you pick one or two different cookies. They make a sandwich.
And they make an ice cream sandwich.
Yes.
Smoosh? Is that what it's called?
I'm going to tell you something. We drove looking for it, found it, ate it, almost had developed diabetes over it, but it was worth every stinking bite. And I got two different kinds of cookie, the ice cream, and then the topping. And girl, I had it was all over my face. It was awful. People were judging me as they were driving by. I'm like, don't look away. Mind your business. It was so good. So good.
Well, speaking of Rice Village, in Rice Village is one of the best Mediterranean restaurants I've ever been to.
What's it called?
It's Istanbul. And you're going to have a heck of a time parking because their restaurant probably seats about 50 or 60 people, but they've only got like 3 parking spots. You're going to have a heck of a time parking, but it is worth it.
It's good.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What do you get there?
All of it.
All of it.
Like, yeah.
Give me everything. Give me everything.
I'll take it.
Okay. So remember, travel. Don't be weird.
Or be weird. Don't be afraid of being weird. I mean, like,
be yourself. Don't pretend like you're. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I say when you're at home, go out and pretend like you're a visitor. But when you're going to visit, quit trying to be like you're not a visitor.
Well, here's the thing.
That makes any sense.
Some very confusing advice. Go out and eat and experience like a local, but don't try to act like you're not a tourist.
Can I tell you a little confession real quick? Right. If I ever met somebody famous that would expect me to know who they were, I would pretend like I didn't know who they were. Like if I was in LA and I ran into like a Kardashian or something, I would act like I had no idea who they were.
I wouldn't have any idea who they are. You know me, I don't know.
Oh, girl. Like,
okay, so long story short, don't go to Rainforest Cafe.
Oh, don't.
Go to Bill and Velma's Diner.
Velma.
That's Brian's grandparents' names.
Oh,
Bill and
yes. Velma. You've got to be super sweet to be named Velma.
She is one of the nicest people I know.
She's still alive?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Both of his grandmothers are alive, Velma and then Delma.
Because their names end with M.
Yeah.
If your name is Ilma of any sign, you're never going to die.
I had a grandmother named Thelma. And so we used
to... Was her sister Louise?
No, but we used to tease our family when we were expecting Ashley, we were going to name her Selma.
Like Alabama?
Just because.
Selma,
I don't know.
Velma, Thelma. I like it. All right. Aimee, thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
I don't even know if this was informative. I hope everybody decides to go on vacation now after they've heard this. And they all stop at a Cracker Barrel. They all eat the hash brown casserole. They drink coffee. They decide if they like it or not. Add a little salt if you need to. And you go and explore. I think it's important.
Explore. That's right.
And get us a gift and send it to us. No, I'm just kidding. But don't get Aimee a coffee mug. She don't want it. She ain't been there.
That's right. Don't give me a coffee mug. But you can send me
cheese.
Send me some cheese curds from Wisconsin.
Have a great day. Thanks for joining us for this extra shot.